privilege.
Gentleman may proceed.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that was a hard act to follow. I've always said the chairman is straight out of central casting when it comes to the House of Delegates, but I did want to follow up on some of the remarks he said. You've heard from Chairman Putney two specific concerns raised by members during the small group meetings related to providing relief to local governments and increasing funding for public education. Clearly, we all know that localities' budgets are stretched thin, and they too are grappling with declining real estate values and increased cost of providing services to all citizens. Overall, nearly 65% of local budgets go to pay their share of the cost of K-12 education. The budget recommendations that the committee will consider on Sunday will address local aid from two fronts. First, as it relates directly to public education, we will put forth recommendations to increase funding for our public schools by an additional $140 million over the amounts recommended by Governor McDonald. I want to thank the governor for his budget proposals that added nearly $438 million in new funding for K-12. With our recommendations, schools would see a total of nearly $580 million in net new money to support classroom instruction and to pay for teacher retirement. Specifically, our amendments will provide $106.1 million in non-personal services inflation using the most up-to-date inflation figures reported by Global Insights. Second, we support adoption of the governor's amendments that will provide an additional $47 million over the biennium to fully fund the K-3 class size reduction program. And third, we fund House Bill 1181, which expands early reading intervention initiative for third graders, and I think that's one of the most important things, obviously, you can do in public education. By adding $6.2 million, we will increase the portion funded from 25% to 62% in the first year, and then fully fund by 100% this initiative in the second year. As we've examined the various policy adjustments in the introduced budget, there's been some discussion on the deduction of the federal stimulus dollars in the benchmarking calculation. You may recall several years ago, Governor Kane recommended a policy to establish staffing standards for non-instructional personnel. This change was common sense in that the standards of quality established staffing for instructional positions, but there was none for support positions. As a result of this recommendation, both state and local governments would realize substantial cost savings. After the adoption of this prudent public policy, federal stimulus funding became available to assist our school divisions in making up for the shortfall in state and local revenues. Because the federal funding was tied to prior year funding levels, school divisions were allowed to offset reductions associated with the policy change in the short term. However, it was made very clear that the stimulus money was one-time in nature. It would not be recognized in the next re-benchmarking cycle. The introduced budget rightly reflects that decision and includes the federal stimulus money in the inflation revenue deduct calculation. In addition to increasing funding for public education, we have focused on mitigating pressures on local aid government more broadly. The amendments we will propose addresses the side of the equation by reducing the $60 million in local reversion that has been included in the budget since proposed by Governor Kane in the 2008 session. For the last 4 years, we've reduced local aid by $60 million each year. While this tool was necessary to balance the budget during the recession, it is not an acceptable long-term solution. Governor McDonald's proposed budget reduces local aid by $25 million. Clearly, this was a priority of Governor McDonald. This amendment offered by the Appropriations Committee will not only embrace the governor's recommendation, but will seek additional amendments to further reduce the reversion by nearly half over the current biennium, making substantial strides in phasing out this structurally unbalanced practice. Mr. Speaker, I want to echo the chairman's remarks. We have listened. We have taken what I think is a good budget, and we're going to make it a very good budget. Thank you.